So in the spirit of very bad puns, can Rocketman soar to new cinematic heights as it launches this weekend? Let's find out. And with that, I'm welcome to another episode of The Romancer, where my goal, as always, is to enhance the movie watching experience. So Rocketman, another biopic about a legendary musician, of course, one Sir Elton John. I'm a huge fan of his. And this is a movie which is, let's just get this out of the way. Let's address the elephant in the room here. This movie is going to be inevitably compared to Bohemian Rhapsody. As such, that's also a biopic about another legendary musician, someone who's equally as talented, and is another theatrical and flamboyant performer, one in Freddie Mercury here. And funny enough, it's an interesting fact that this director of Rocketman was actually called in to complete Bohemian Rhapsody when Bryan Singer was let go from the project. So having him here, bringing that same sensibilities, he did to this movie, and only benefited this movie because overall I thought this was a really well done film here. This is one I really enjoyed, really well made and executed. It's one of my favorite movies so far this year. Now ultimately there's some things that I thought this movie may have done better, but overall I thought Bohemian Rhapsody was a better film, was much more, I thought, a crowd pleasing, more entertaining, and the musical numbers were done a lot better in a certain sense. But don't get me wrong, that being said, there's no shame in being just slightly below that movie. This is really well done. I'm not saying this is an Oscar contender. I don't think it is. But one thing it may share in common with is the strong performance of his lead. And that's by, of course, Taron Egerton, who plays Sir Elton John here. A young up-and-coming actor who we've seen in Kingsman, and he was a fantastic Aid of the Eagle opposite Hugh Jackman a couple years ago. And I thought he was really strong here. He's, again, the performance of his career thus far, much like Rami Malek's was when he portrayed Freddie Mercury. And what's even more of a daunting task for him was that he actually performed the music, the songs. It was actually his voice. He sang the songs and all that. So add a higher degree of difficulty here. And that's no slight on Malek's performance, because let's be honest, it's difficult to sing for anybody to sing Freddie Mercury. That's much more difficult to do. But that being said, Elton John is no slouch. But Egerton, he held his own here. I thought he was really strong. He really embodied the character of who Elton John was. Again, his persona, the theatrics, but behind the scenes, the struggles he went through mentally, obviously fighting his addiction with drugs and alcohol. And I thought he just hit it out of he hit a home run here. Now, one thing I'll say here, this is where the trailer's a little bit misleading, because, I mean, from a biopic standpoint, it's pretty standard, pretty bad numbers. They all are, including Bohemian Rhapsody, where, it begins, in a certain point, it chronicles his life to a certain point of his career, and it kind of follows the same beats every other biopic follows. It's hard to kind of get away from that. What separates this is, in terms of other movies, it's this presentation, what it decides to do, because this is more like a musical than anything else. This is where the trailers don't really kind of indicate to you. I'm not saying this is one that break out in song and dance every 5 minutes. That's not what it is. But the use of Elton John's music is done throughout and embedded in the narrative of the story, meaning that a certain situation comes up and they'll do a song to portray the emotion of what's going on. They'll set it up as far as the scene itself, and there's maybe some choreographed dancing along with that. And it's done with a certain flair and energy and flamboyance and theatrics, which makes sense because that's exactly who Elton John was. So I thought that made perfect sense here. I mean, if you're not big on musicals, like I said, it's not a full-fledged musical, but the presentation is more musical type than anything else. But it's not overly done, so you're not gonna, if that's not your cup of tea, I don't think you're gonna be really swayed by it. I think it's more you can still enjoy for the most part. If you don't mind the musical thing, you're gonna fit right in here, because again, this is very entertaining. It's very well done, and the one thing that this movie actually did better than Bohemian Rhapsody was that it really gave us more of a deep dive into Elton John himself. Beginning when he was very young, his issues with his parents, which helped unfortunately shape who he was, and his struggles mentally with that. How he carried that throughout most of his life, leading to the drug and alcohol abuse. And they dive into the sexuality as well, similar to Freddie Mercury's situation, obviously being homosexual at a time when that wasn't really accepted. And they took a more of a deep dive. But again, this movie had an opportunity to do so because it's just focusing on Elton John. Bohemian Rhapsody was focusing on the overall band Queen, of course. Yeah, it had a strong focus on Freddie Mercury, but it had other things to take care of. This one just all about Elton John, of course, and when he was young, when he met his best friend Bernie, who was obviously his lyricist, co-writer for virtually almost every song that he had, up to a point where he got in and out of rehab. So again, very well done. Egerton really brings that energy. I thought it was really well done. Great direction here with the style and the theatrics. There's one way I think where I'm gonna be as crowd pleasing as the Bohemian Rhapsody. I think it's very well done, very entertaining. Again, one of my favorite movies this year. And I think it's one you guys should absolutely go out and go watch. Granted, it's very crowded opening weekend here. We got a couple of big movies coming out. This is the summertime. I wish this movie would have been released much later in the year, would have got more eyes on it. Be that as it may, if you have some time, you're a big fan of Elton John, this is one I absolutely recommend. It's a very well done, very well directed film, and Taron Egerton knocks it out of the park as far as I'm concerned. He was, again, the performance of his life here and all that. So that being said, I absolutely recommend this movie. You guys check it out, comment below. And of course, if you haven't done so already, subscribe below and feed money to go to the movies and talk about it afterwards. See you guys next time.